Hello, everyone, and thank you for joining us today for a discussion around the power of advocacy organizations. I'm Jessica Foley, Chief Scientific Officer at the Focused Ultrasound Foundation, and I'm pleased to be joined today by Patrick Hope from MITA, the Medical Imaging and Technology Alliance, and Brian O'Connor from AdvaMed, the Advanced Medical Technology Association. And I'll ask them to introduce themselves in just a minute. But first, just a bit of context for this discussion. The Focused Ultrasound Foundation has been fortunate to collaborate with MITA and AdvaMed, both leading advocacy organizations who have the expertise and relationships to help us address the key issues that create roadblocks to commercialization and ultimately limit patient access to focused ultrasound therapies. In April of 2018, the foundation and MITA formed a partnership with the goal of raising awareness of focused ultrasound technology among policymakers, payers, and medical specialty societies. The partnership, which now includes 7 focused ultrasound companies, has laid important groundwork to reduce barriers for focused ultrasound. And in the summer of 2019, the foundation established a partnership with AdvaMed, which now includes 11 focused ultrasound companies. An overarching goal, again, is to identify how we can work together to help break down the roadblocks that companies are facing. And now to our discussion. So welcome. Thank you both for joining us. I'm happy you could do this. I wanted to first, give you both an opportunity to introduce yourselves and your organizations, since many in our community may not be familiar. So I'll start with Brian.
Thanks, Jessica, and thanks so much for having us today as a part of this discussion. Honored to be here with Patrick, a partner in crime on medtech issues. But as Jessica mentioned, my name is Brian O'Connor. I serve as the Chief of Staff at AdvaMed and currently the Interim Executive Director of AdvaMed Excel, which we'll get to momentarily, which is a key partnership with us and the Focused Ultrasound Foundation. But we are a global trade association representing medtech companies across the spectrum, from the largest multinationals down to 2-person operations who are hoping to be the next largest multinational. We also represent across a variety of medtech space, if you will. We have dedicated sections to diagnostics, AdvaMed DX. We have, I mentioned, the dedicated section to AdvaMed Excel, which is focused on our small company medtech needs. We have the Center for Digital Health, a truly emerging area in this space. We'll talk about later some things that have happened this past year have accelerated that move to digital health, and has been really important for us to really have that expertise across the spectrum, allow us to serve our members as best as possible. And as Jessica said, the simplest put, our message is to ensure that medtech innovators have the easiest and most predictable path possible to getting devices, technologies to patients that need them. If you put a simple point on it, that's about it. And then we'll dive into it more, and I'll allow Patrick to talk about his group as well.
Yeah. Hi, Jessica. Brian, it's great to be with the both of you today. I'm Patrick Hope. I'm the Executive Director of MITA, the Medical Imaging and Technology Alliance, and I've been at MITA, the Executive Director, for about 6 years. MITA is an organization whose membership base, I think, can best be described as medical imaging manufacturers and radiopharmaceutical manufacturers. Our primary focus as an organization is advocacy, but a large part of what we do is also standards development. And we're a standards development organization. So we write standards in the medical imaging modalities to improve patient safety and the industry. Our member companies represent really the full spectrum of companies in this space, small, medium, and large companies. We represent over 90% of the advanced medical imaging market, but we have a lot of startups in the software space and other areas, PET, radiopharmaceutical, focused ultrasound. Many of the members, they're early adopters or they're pre-revenue adopters. So we have a full spectrum of different organizations that we represent within MITA.
Great. Thank you both. So Patrick, I was sticking with you. Can you share what got you interested in focused ultrasound and how your partnership with us at the foundation came about?
Sure, Jeff. It's actually very interesting. Some history. I first learned about the work of focused ultrasound happening at the University of Virginia. I believe they were treating essential tremor and uterine fibroids. One of our MITA members was a partner within Cytec, and they invited us to a Capitol Hill demonstration, I believe it was around 2016, on essential tremor. And it was a very impressive demonstration of the great innovation with essential tremor, how it can lead to a very normal life for patients, and was really struck by that. And Jessica, you wrote an article back in April of 2017 in one of the health trade publications, demonstrating really the promise of focused ultrasound, all the different indications out there globally, but just very few recognized here in the United States. And I thought to myself, well, recognizing what those barriers are here in the US, I thought MIDA could be really helpful to do that. And so I reached out to you and had a couple of meetings with Neil Cassell, and it really become a great partnership where we're really getting ready to do some really good things.
Great. Yeah, it's really been an important partnership for us. So maybe just describe a little bit about how we work together and with the companies, kind of about our working group that we set up and how that works.
But all of the members on Focus Ultrasound come into MIDA, and we treat them like every other member that we have at MIDA. The Focus Ultrasound group meets specifically about once a month to talk about specific issues related to the focus ultrasound industry. But there is a lot of cross-pollination, I would say, within the focus ultrasound group and our other different committees. For example, we'll see a lot of our focus ultrasound members that will join our reimbursement and our coverage committees that we have within MIDA. And so I think the main point here is that when MIDA sends a letter to FDA or CMS, it has the input of the focus ultrasound members and their feedback. And so all members, all companies are welcome in that vein to provide input, to participate in the strategy discussions that we have. I always tell new members within that want to join MIDA, try it before you buy it. Stick your head in to some of our meetings and see all the really good conversations and discussions that we're doing. And of course, my long-term hope for focus ultrasound is that as the industry matures, there will be a need down the road for standards development. I know we're not there yet, but I think as the industry matures, I believe that there will be a need for that, and that MIDA will be able to fill that need as well.
Great. And we'll get back to a little bit more about how we've been partnering together. We'll share some more of that, but I wanted to move to Brian and ask you, how is AdvaMed right now working with the foundation and focus ultrasound companies?
Well, yeah, and not dissimilarly. And again, the University of Virginia is going to get a shout out here because I believe your efforts there to let Jeff Gallagher, Virginia Bio, to reach out to us and say, Brian, you're missing the boat here on focus ultrasound. And I'll admit, I was not aware of the foundation, and I wasn't aware of the expanse of technology, the incredible, like I said, breadth of applications of focus ultrasound as a therapy. Jessica, for the focus ultrasound members, Jessica has this kind of one-page handout that shows where the different therapies are in the timeline from approval to reimbursement, et cetera, early stage. And it's one of the most effective advocacy tools I've ever seen. And so kudos to her and her work there. But in terms of how we work together, it's not dissimilar to Patrick. One of the most important things that we look for the focus ultrasound members that come into AdvaMed is what Patrick mentioned, that voice in all of our policy discussions. We want to make sure that focus ultrasound's perspective is represented in our reimbursement committee, in our FDA advocacy committee, in our government affairs committee, because quite frankly, it's an exciting technology to take around and talk about on Capitol Hill. Patrick talked about the effects on central tremor, tumor ablation, cardiovascular. There's an expanse of issues here that this kind of is not obvious to a lot of folks, and a lot of folks on Capitol Hill will leave Capitol Hill opinions off this discussion. But not everyone is aware of focus ultrasound. So one of the ways we look forward to working together beyond policy development, as Patrick mentioned, is advocacy and highlighting the efforts of the foundation. I think one of the things that we strive to do is represent that small company. I mentioned right now I'm the executive director of AdvaMed Excel. So we have over 300 members at AdvaMed Excel. Those are small companies. We go by the FDA definition of 100 million in sales. But they have an equal voice in policy discussions as some of our larger companies, as our chairman, Stryker, as Johnson & Johnson, et cetera. And so having focus ultrasound in the room to have those discussions is important. Your team had a workshop at AdvaMed earlier this year, and our reimbursement team came away excited by the discussion, which is tough to do. They've seen a lot. So for them to be excited about what you guys were doing and bringing to the table and asking some unique questions about coverage, it's an exciting road forward for us. And we look forward to continue working together to bring this technology to the next phase.
Yeah. Great. Yeah. And I just wanted to highlight a couple of things. One, we did have this great reimbursement workshop, and For those of you who are, hopefully everyone watching at our symposium is also subscribing to our newsletter, and you should have gotten a reimbursement focus feature newsletter that went out a little while ago, and we had from there the summary of this great reimbursement workshop that we had in partnership with Advocacy, which was really great. And I wanted to highlight something else that we've done with MIDA for the last couple of years, which is really exciting and I think has been really successful, and that's our Capitol Hill fly-in that we have every year, and that allows both the members of this focused ultrasound working group, so the companies, as well as patients and providers and members of the foundation to meet with representatives, to meet with members of Congress and or their staff on Capitol Hill and really advocate for focused ultrasound. And what was really exciting was that this last time around in March, we were really promoting kind of a new pathway for companies, innovative medical device companies, because there's usually this lag between FDA approval and reimbursement coverage. And so we were promoting, a new type of a pathway for that. And then, as I know you both are aware, there was a recent big win for MedTech innovation with a new proposed program from CMS that came out. And if finalized, this Medicare Coverage of Innovative Technology MCIT program will allow for 4 years of Medicare coverage for devices that are designated as breakthrough by the FDA. So this would essentially eliminate that lag time between FDA approval of a device and Medicare coverage, giving this immediate 4-year coverage for new and innovative devices. And so, as I mentioned, we were advocating on this exact type of a pathway at our fly-in. I know Advocacy has also been advocating for similar things as well. And so this was, a really big win for the whole community and for our partnerships. And we also think that this new rule presents a great incentive for our focused ultrasound manufacturers to apply for this breakthrough designation by the FDA for their future or ongoing applications. So sponsors are able to submit a breakthrough designation request for a device at any time prior to sending in their final, marketing submission application to the FDA. And I know from the foundation perspective, we'll be following up with some more information for companies about this program, because we know a lot of our companies are not familiar with breakthrough, but I think it's a real great opportunity for our companies. So I just wanted to ask you guys, how have MIDA and Advocacy been involved in pushing for this kind of a pathway, as well as other proposed policy changes that could really reduce barriers for companies and get patients access to new therapies more quickly? And also, how do you work with companies on those types of efforts? Do you want to start, Brian?
Absolutely. No, you hit the nail on the head. The proposed rule that came out recently, MCIT, got to have cool, catchy names on NDC, under various names of a breakthrough pathway, breakthrough reimbursement, breakthrough coverage. This has been a top tier priority for Advocacy and MIDA for a few years now. The breakthrough designation has existed at FDA, since the passage of 21st Century Cures, in its current form. And on the drug side, while this is an important distinction between the drug and the medtech and the imaging side, and the drug side, once a breakthrough product is approved at the FDA, it's tacitly covered. Be it Part B, Part D, et cetera. It is covered by Medicare and it's in the market. On the medtech side, that does not happen. A breakthrough product, is designated breakthrough. This is cutting edge. This is game changing. This is what's next. This is what's needed. Which is great. And to Jessica's point, everyone who's exploring therapy in that space should apply for that, right? However, then you get to the end of the pipeline or the end of the process, you're approved by FDA, you get your gold star, and CMS says, we got to review this for 3 to 5 years before we even think about giving you a code. And that's just not sustainable. That's 3 to 5 years that patients in need are not receiving access, to that breakthrough therapy. So as I mentioned, we've been working with CMS and stakeholders for many years here. We've introduced legislation on Capitol Hill on this. We've come at it from all angles. And the way we've engaged with companies on it is, quite frankly, tell them the story, is sharing the impact of what these breakthrough products are. These aren't, a new widget. This is a widget that doesn't exist, and this is something that is truly going to change the course of care from an individual and their families, and is why our companies do what we do. So we've engaged in public affairs exercises, highlighting op-eds in key districts with companies across the country. and bringing folks to Capitol Hill, as Patrick and Jessica both mentioned. We have a company called Second Sight that basically helps create synthetic vision for those with vision challenges. I mean, those are kind of the ideas, some of the things that are happening here. And I know, Jessica, we discussed during that reimbursement session that some of your companies have gone that route or debating that route. And so this breakthrough rule, and Jessica mentioned, it's a big win that it's a proposed rule. We got to get over the finish line. We're all submitting comments and crossing our fingers largely here in the next few week or so. The comments are due next week. But what we want to do is we want to make that breakthrough pathway, not necessarily attractive, maybe the wrong word, but know that there's some certainty there, that there's coverage on the other side. It's one of the biggest challenges across our industry. FDA, again, through FDA has gone in leaps and bounds of predictability, transparency, and what people would expect. The coverage side has still been a little less clear, and this does a lot to provide clarity and hopefully carry this process on to the next phase faster, which again is getting it to patients that need them.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I mean, again, this is proof that the advocacy has been paying off, that we are effective in these tactics that we've been taking on. Our primary objective is to raise awareness of this innovative technology. And I think the Capitol Hill fly-ins, which includes focused ultrasound patients who can tell their stories, physicians and industry members all coming together to have these conversations with people on Capitol Hill. It's the letters that my organization, AdvoCacy, are sending, saying very consistent messages, speaking at workshops. I know we even met with one of the officials at the White House to talk specifically about this issue, about this gap between FDA approval and CMS coverage and reimbursement. And then it's also having patient and physicians engaged in educating the public, op-eds, letters to the editors, the joint press releases that we've done with the foundation have all paid off because all these different groups are creating this noise in a vacuum that people are talking to one another about, hey, this is a problem that needs to be dealt with. And I do think we're now entering this new phase now where we've got this proposed rule. We expect the final rule to come out in a month or so. We hope that it stays intact, but we need to make sure that the implementation comes through and that not just the CMS side, but the FDA side is broad in what they designate this breakthrough status. And we need to ensure that more companies can fit in, not fewer, but more companies can fit in and take advantage of this newfound effort.
Yeah, that's great. And I think those are all ways that we'll be working with you guys in the future as this gets implemented. So, I'd be remiss if I didn't mention the current environment that we're in with all the challenges due to COVID-19. And Brian, I know AdvoCacy has been so instrumental working with med tech companies as they've tried to navigate all of these challenges. So I want to give you the opportunity to just talk about a bit about those efforts, highlight some successes and then challenges that still remain as we move forward.
Absolutely. I mean, as Jessica mentioned, we were together for that panel, the reimbursement session right before, DC and our world as we know it changed and shut down for who knows how long. But really, the industry was forced to also change overnight. If you look back to the beginning of this process or of COVID, particularly here in the States, what were you hearing about? You were hearing about personal protective equipment for frontline workers. MedTech companies develop those. You were hearing about shortage of ventilators. MedTech companies develop those. And then you're hearing about testing, where that's going to be. MedTech companies developing those as well. And so it really was an inflection point, a crucial point for the industry to really rally together. And I'll talk about AdvoCacy's role in a minute, but I do want to applaud our companies. They did come together in ways that I don't even know they expected in terms of collaboration, speed, flexibility, all which was critically important to ensure that these things were getting done. So AdvoCacy, a week after we shut down, we reorganized our entire structural alignment to focus on the COVID-19 response and ensure we were serving our company, supply chain issues, sourcing issues for the most basic products of those ventilators, pulling our ventilator companies together with Google to crowdsource ventilator manufacturing parts. I mean, things along those lines as what we were going on kind of 200 miles an hour. But we set up our board knew this was important and set up 3 board level committees that met weekly all throughout this break to ensure we're on the right path on 3 main areas. And one was return to procedure. ensuring that procedures could go back in hospitals, that people felt safe to return to hospitals for things that weren't COVID related. Two, obviously diagnostic testing, which is still an issue that we're all working through. And three, really small company focus. The smaller companies were hit disproportionately hard than some larger ones, throughout this process, and ensuring that we unfortunately have stories of SBIR funds that were approved and about to go out the door, and then those are stopped and diverted, within the government to other areas of priorities for COVID. So really working on Capitol Hill to ensure some of the early rounds of stimulus with the payment protection plans and some other medtech stimulus initiatives were included there. Those kind of three areas were the main focus of our board, and as I said, I applaud them for their dedication. Board meetings every week for 6-7 months is a challenge for everyone. And our executives were as focused as I've ever seen a group, and pulling things together. And one kind of proof positive point about the things I mentioned earlier and their effectiveness is the issues around PPE. You're not hearing about those anymore. Hopefully those have been resolved. The issues around ventilators, you're not hearing that shortages anymore. Those issues have been resolved. Diagnostic testing continues. We have rolled out ADMA has rolled out a diagnostic testing registry to help show states and the federal government, where the reagents are, where the products are. If we need to shift testing supply in certain areas to ensure everyone has access, we're ready to do that, and that's an ongoing conversation. But yeah, no, it was an overnight switch that we flipped, reorganized, and did our part to help bring companies together to get the job done. And it really is on the companies; they deserve all the credit.
That's great, and I thank you for all that work, particularly pushing for relief for the small companies. I know several of our companies benefited from the Paycheck Protection Program and other things, so that's really great.
That's awesome.
When we think about this, kind of coming out of this, and as you mentioned, kind of getting back to care, I wanted to turn to Patrick because I know MIDA has a campaign around encouraging patients to get back to care, and that includes imaging, but of course that also includes things like focused ultrasound treatment. So again, if you could just talk a little bit about that, those types of campaigns, and how you work with companies and patients on those efforts.
Yeah, of course. I mean, our economy has had downturns in the past, but never before have we seen a downturn that has had such a negative impact on hospitals and physician practices and patients going to seek care. And the state of emergency, and with elected procedures being delayed, we're still seeing some steep declines in screening procedures and services that might be considered elective. Now, some modalities are starting to go back up. Mammography, for example, CT is still way down. But we know that there's a number of diagnoses that aren't being had. Of course, our immediate concern was for the practices themselves, that many physician practices had to close their doors, furlough, or lay off employees. But the short term is putting off these annual screening exams, and in some cases, treatment. And we all know that early and accurate diagnosis always leads to better outcomes. And so we know that the cancer diagnosis, even though it dropped sharply the first 6 months, we all know that cancer didn't go away. So there is a concern about the human costs related to delayed diagnosis. So we launched this Back to Care campaign, working with the physician community in an effort to have patients and providers be the voice to encourage patients to not put off care. Physicians sending in letters to the editors and op-eds in 20 or 30 different outlets throughout the country, talking about how safe it is to come into the physician's office and to get that screening exam. Patients talking about how the screening exam can save their lives. So we're starting to see some of these procedures come back to pre-COVID levels. And so what we're doing is starting to make an impact.
That's great. And, I know from the focused ultrasound perspective, being a treatment that is often available to patients with cancer, that early diagnosis is important. We think focused ultrasound is also very well positioned in kind of this post-COVID environment because, it's a non-invasive procedure. Therefore, it's eliminating a lot of opportunity for infections. It's mostly outpatient procedure. So again, it's not tying up hospital beds that, we see that hospitalizations are coming back again with COVID right now. And so a procedure that is non-invasive and is going to get patients in and out quickly is great for that environment. And as well, it's not using ionizing radiation, limiting the opportunity for lowering the immune system and that sort of thing, making patients susceptible to infection as well. So we see, a lot of opportunity for focused ultrasound to, kind of continue. And luckily it has in most states, gotten back to some decent level in terms of the treatments. So I think we're getting close to the end of our time, but I just wanted to sort of look towards the future a little bit. Obviously we have we're filming this before the election. So that's going to be, interesting. By the time people hear this at a symposium, we may know something about where we're going to end up, not necessarily, but just kind of giving you the opportunity to see, what do you see coming down the pipeline in the future in terms of, med tech innovation, how soon after the results, come in from this big election, do you expect to get a little bit more clarity on what may be the prevailing issues that we'll be tackling moving forward? I'll let Patrick start with that.
Sure. Well, of course, it doesn't really matter to us who's in the White House or who's operating Congress, because MIDA is a nonpartisan organization. I think with President Trump, another election for him is probably going to continue his emphasis on tariffs and supply chain issues. Tariffs probably long-term has been harmful to most of our companies. Supply chain issues, particularly with COVID, I think it's a healthy conversation to have, discussing what our supply chain are and understanding those issues. A President Biden might have more of an emphasis on improved access to care, and that's a net positive for making sure patients get screening. I think the Affordable Care Act lawsuit that's before the Supreme Court, it could force change if in fact they have to come up with a new healthcare plan. And so it could lead to greater access or it could lead to diminished access. Not really sure there. A President Biden might pick up where he left off he was vice president, was leading the cancer moonshot. And I think that's a good opportunity for funding for cancer research and innovative treatment and diagnosis. I think that's an opportunity there. But I think when you look at Congress, there's a lot of retirements. There could be a lot of defeats for members not coming back. I see that as fertile ground for us to begin to educate new members, to cultivate new champions of focused ultrasound, this technology. At FDA and CMS, the regulators are likely to be some changes there. And so we'll want to make sure that we continue to build on the progress that we've already made and make sure that we can tout the innovation of focused ultrasound even further within the regulators.
Yeah, Patrick pretty much hit the nail on the head there. We're as Jessica, we may know on election day, we may not. But the one thing that we will know is that everyone gets sick. This is unfortunately getting sick is bipartisan. Patrick, no matter who's in charge, we will be focusing on advancing all forms of med tech. Is it a blue or red Congress? Does that make a difference? Maybe in terms of funding this and that, but our priorities really, as Patrick laid out, this is an opportunity to highlight what we do and what our companies do. And focused ultrasound is a great example of that. As the retired, it's gonna be a new Capitol Hill, regardless of what happens. As Patrick mentioned, some retirements, some long time allies, and some long time less than allies, maybe moving off to different careers. But this is the time to go in and as Patrick said, nonpartisan. We can't afford to be partisan. We've got too much to do no matter who's in charge. And I really think that if there's whatever happens on election day, continuing to highlight our technologies, continuing to tell our story, the story of medtech. Patrick, I got to give Patrick a shout out. The Right Scan, Right Time campaign and the Return to Care and their Flying Day are excellent events. They are top notch, and they all do the same thing. They tell the story. They tell the impact and shows how revolutionary and game changing these technologies are, and how important they are to the total course of care. So that was a very Sunday talk show answer of not answering the question of what's gonna happen after election day. But we'll continue to advocate and to drive medtech into hopefully the next phase and keep getting therapies to patients as soon as possible.
Well, that's the fun of the question, right? Is to just see how you kind of tap dance around. So anyway, but okay, so I think we're definitely out of time now, but this has really been a wonderful conversation. I thank you both for participating in this. And I want to encourage anyone in the audience, if you're interested in getting involved with our partnerships, our focused ultrasound partnerships with AdvaMed and MIDA, please feel free to reach out to me or anyone on the FUS Partners team at the foundation. And, just look for a lot of really exciting things for us to do together in the future. So again, thank you both.
Thank you. Good to be with you.
Thank you.